Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a seasoned fractional talent acquisition partner who began his career in the industry through an RPO model, supporting organizations like Barclays Bank and Vodafone. He then transitioned into entrepreneurship by founding and eventually selling his own embedded recruitment firm, but now working as a fractional TA. He's leveraging his decade-long experience to help organizations navigate hiring challenges while also understanding the nuances of different hiring models and when they are most effective. This conversation for me is one of the most fundamental reasons behind this podcast, where once he might have been seen as a competitor to myself, he's now viewed as an ally, uniting the common goal of finding the actual best talents for the companies that we work for, be it we're fractional TAs, external recruiters, or internal team members. It's no longer an us versus them mentality, but a we for the greater good of the company. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, fractional TA manager Tom Brown. So Tom, genuinely thank you so much for joining me. And like I said, I mean every word of that. I think that the conversations we've been having over these last few weeks and getting to know each other, there's so many things I can learn from you and vice versa. And that's why I'm so excited about this conversation in general, because it's kind of putting all the things to rest about who's right for each role and that sort of stuff. It's just, let's just get to the nitty gritty. Let's all help each other. So thank you for joining.
No, you're welcome. And thanks so much for having me, Eden. As you know, I've been experiencing some extreme anxiety about doing this for such a long time. So I'm glad to be here and really excited to chat with you about all things TA, and hopefully I can add some value here. So thanks.
No, I'm sure there's going to be a lot to uncover. So before we kind of get into the specifics of what we'll talk about, I want to kind of peel it back a little bit. And everyone in this series or season, shall we say, is getting the same question to kind of understand. So in your perspective, what makes high-performing recruitment teams or high-performing talent teams?
So it's a good question, right? So a high-performing team, whether it's a TA team, an accounts team, or a team of choreographed clowns at the circus, it starts with the big cheese, to be honest, right? If your team doesn't have the right leader in place, they're set up to fail from the start. You'll end up with some very sad clowns and accountants. And a high-performing team member needs to feel validated and supported from their glorious TA leader, especially in TA, right? In order to be high-performing. There's nothing more demotivating than feeling like you don't fit in your TA team. Happens all the time. I've experienced it myself over the years, and it's not very nice. Even the best one in the world, you can be the best in class TA person, but if your TA leader isn't right, you just don't feel like you can be your best. It's like anything. It's true for any team, right? You need to all be working collaboratively. You'll need clear direction and support from your manager, and a clear understanding of what the team is trying to achieve and what your role within that team is. I suppose the final point on this, I guess, is OKRs and metrics often help with that because that's who we are inherently.
So do you think what makes the high-performing team is driven by a high-performing leader?
100%, absolutely. And that's what motivates me as well, like a high-performing leader, but also a leader who understands and appreciates everyone's different motivation. Like personally, I'm very good at just rolling up my sleeves, cracking on with a job and doing what I need to do. But what motivates me is my boss, my TA leader, acknowledging me and saying and validating me and saying, "Oh, Tom, you did really well last week," and sort of driven by praise. Whereas other people aren't driven by praise.
Yeah.
Other people are driven by delivery or driven by getting up and having a Wim Hof ice bath at 5 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. But what my point is, a decent TA leader will know that, right? They'll know, right? There's Tom. He needs to be driven by praise. If I say something even slightly potentially negative, he'll panic about it because he's got rejection sensitivity, because that's how his neurodiverse brain works. So I better not book in a meeting for the next day to say, oh, we need to chat, because I know Tom's going to worry about that.
Yeah.
If you're booking in a meeting with me because you need to chat about something the next day, tell me what it is, because I'm going to be demotivated. I'm going to be worrying all night, get to that meeting, and then it'll be like, oh yeah, Tom, just to say, oh yeah, well done on this, or have you done this, or have you, I will always think of the worst. I don't know whether there's some early trauma in my early careers. I started my life off as an estate agent 20 years ago, so it's probably the trauma from that, right? So yeah, any decent leader needs to know what makes everyone tick, because we're all very different.
On the point of being different then, so the leader drives performance of the team, overall performance, but obviously as the individuals you're also responsible for your component of that team. So then let me flip the question slightly. What makes a high performing recruiter in that case then?
I think that's probably just the easiest part of the question to answer. Is a high performing recruiter is someone who does good recruitment, right? So when I was running an embedded talent company all those years ago, I needed, for my clients, the best TA specialists to hit the ground running. Minimal training. At the end of the day, my clients were paying for the best. So, of course, a really good recruiter is someone who can find the best candidates, provide a decent candidate experience, and fill a role. As I said, I think that's the easy part, right? Unpopular opinion, I don't know. Everyone talks about candidate experience, as they should do, right? The biggest moan on LinkedIn you see from job hunters, and including job hunters within TA, the biggest moans are ghosting, lack of feedback, and comms in general between recruiter and candidate. So it's so important to keep talking about, and always making sure that we are providing an unrivaled candidate experience. I don't know about you, but most of the roles I feel come from good old fashioned headhunting. So of course that's even more important to give candidates the platinum service. But what makes a good recruiter and what isn't spoken about? Well, what I feel isn't spoken about. And people watching this might think, well, it is, Tom. What isn't spoken about is hiring manager experience, right? I think that's equally, if not more, important than candidate experience. As an internal recruiter, hiring manager experience is always and has been on the forefront of my mind at all times. Candidates talk about ghosting, but bad recruiters ghost hiring managers as well. And in my mind, that's completely worse. There's nothing worse than you're working a role Monday to Friday, and you're putting in the work, but you haven't got that shortlist yet. And then the following Monday comes and the hiring manager is chasing you, right? Mm-hmm. Or even worse, the hiring manager is chasing you through your boss, and then your boss is chasing you and putting that meeting in the diary for the next day. And then they're saying, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I know I'm working the role. Well, you need to tell the hiring manager, you need to keep in constant communication with the hiring manager, even if there is no update, because the hiring manager only has one role. So that's on their mind all the time. We have 15 roles, so we're spinning plates. So a good recruiter doesn't ghost hiring managers. Going back to the hiring managers, experience side of things, really good recruiters are the ones who can brief any role with any hiring manager, whether it's within their specialism or not. Don't know, another unpopular opinion. But for example, we all silo ourselves. I'm a really good tech recruiter. I'm a really good GTM recruiter. Personally, my strengths lie in GTM. I really enjoy GTM. but I could do tech recruitment. I don't like doing tech recruitment, but don't tell anyone that. So
Sorry if you're listening.
if a really good tech recruiter uses the same framework they use with an engineering manager to brief a dev role, they can carry out a solid brief with a head of sales to successfully close a business development manager role. And that's really important to remember when later on when I hopefully talk about the various different options, because I think one thing in this day and age as a recruiter is you have to be lean, you have to be agile. So don't silo yourself as, I'm a really strong recruiter, tech recruiter, because one day you might be asked to pick up a sales role or a marketing role, or I didn't personally work it, but at Tombola, my last contract, they had an on-site cafeteria. Lovely perk, free hot food. And so, someone in the TA team, I think he was the head of people actually, I think they had to recruit for a sous chef, right? So, what tech recruiters they've recruited for a sous chef for a tech company. So keep it lean. It might be out of your comfort zone, but you can do it. Briefs. It's all about asking the right questions, and of course, not only asking the right questions during the brief, listening to the answers, and making the hiring manager feel like you are listening, making the hiring manager feel like you understand the role, like they understand the role, and building that strong foundation with them from day one. And as I said, go back to this is crucial, especially when working within a lean internal or embedded team at a tech startup where the hiring plan is so vast that 1 month you could be working on a dozen devs and the next month you could be building out the GTM team. And this is where I personally thrive, this sort of post Series B startup environment. I love a hiring plan with a really sort of wide range of vacancies to get stuck into. High performing recruiter will always be thinking about the hiring manager. At the end of the day, we're here to give them the day jobs back. Bit of a cheesy phrase. I said it earlier to someone and they said, the phrase was a bit passé, but it's a bit cheesy. And a good hiring manager experience for me, as I said, I think covers the following points. So making sure that they leave the brief feeling like I understand their role as much as they do. Agreeing delivery dates and milestones. So not just the date when you provide them a shortlist, but booking in that CV review meeting so you can go through the CVs with them, booking out a block of interview placeholders. So when they do decide to interview your candidates, the slots are there. So you're not adding more time on the process. That goes towards the positive candidate experience as well. All the way to some instances, booking in the wash-up meeting at the end of the process to decide who the successful candidate is.
I like that phrase, a wash-up meeting.
Yeah, I like a 15, and it's so important. I like a 15-minute wash-up. At the end of the process, you sit down with, and it's sometimes hard to coordinate, especially if the interview process is quite long. There's tech tests, there's peer-to-peer interviews, but I always like to, everyone who has had a touch point with the candidate, I would invite them to, whether they're a decision maker or not, I will invite them to a 15-20 minute wash up and say, right, okay, and this is the final stage candidate who we're probably going to offer. So I will go around the room, I'll lead it, the virtual room, and say, right, any red flags? We want to make an offer to this candidate, but are there any red flags? What are the good points? What are the development points? And potentially make a note of the development points to give to the hiring manager, or the hiring manager takes away and works on a development plan for when they start. It's always important to have that wash-up meeting. From an internal hiring manager experience, it also elevates those peers who have been part of the interview process as well, and makes them feel validated, makes them feel like they not making a decision, but makes them feel important as part of the process for their own.
It gets buy-in from them still. It dangles that opportunity of, oh, this is what something extra could feel like. If I start taking more responsibility here, this is the next potential step. I like what you're talking about with the kind of the elements of that. I'm kind of summarizing more of kind of from what I'm hearing is be total transparent and own that process and really drive that, be the driver of the process. Protecting the hiring manager's time is super key, because that is what we do, right? Our job is to find the people. We want to do it in as quick and efficient way as possible. And the only way you can do that is if you are quick and efficient from the very get-go. The only difference I think I would potentially throw in there, I don't believe that the best recruiters can take any spec. I think you can take the spec, but I don't think that the best recruiters work every spec or can work every spec. For example, I could definitely qualify a sales manager role, 110%, but I'm not the right person to work that role, and I would never admit that I'm the right person because I don't know the nuances of the position. But if you ask me to go find, I don't know, a director of engineering, yeah, I know exactly. It doesn't matter what technology you're in, doesn't matter what industry you're in. I can adapt to that. So I think a good recruiter can do that. But I think the very best recruiters actually, to me, they stick within what they know, and then you build out the team around that, and then you have people who are shit hot tech, shit hot sales. I tell you who do it really well. Auto One do that really well, and they company in Berlin, and they have dedicated specialists to each area, and then when those roles come in, and then you also build out your career inside that. As a fractional TA, I appreciate obviously yours is slightly different because you have to kind of go in and muddle around to different parts, but that would be my only counter.
And I get that, and I appreciate that. Auto One, would that be an internal team then?
Yeah.
So they have specialisms. And do you know what? There's a company. Oh God, I can't remember who they were. A tech company recently in the EV space that they secured their Series A or Series B. There were only a couple of hundred heads, but they hired like 10 people within their perm TA team for that reason. But when you start doing that, you really put yourself at risk of having to make TA teams redundant during
I can see that happening.
Now, so there's two sides of the coin there, right? So if we've got a CEO, we talk about startups who has a startup tech company, they need to hire 100 people in a year, and say there's like 10 specialisms within that 100 headcount hiring plan. You're not going to hire 10 recruiters. You're going to get 2 recruiters, and that's where that comes in. And I suppose from an agency point of view, it's always good to have. And we're jumping ahead for what I want to talk about.
I was about to say we'll get to the models, because that's the differences between what makes each unique specific model right for you at whatever time.
Absolutely, but I suppose I'm just talking about it from my point of view. Recruitment is just a tiny part of the TA process. For an agency, absolutely. Recruitment is what you do, right? And there may be some aspects of the TA process that you do as well as a value add to your clients, which is great. But recruitment is this, and then TA is this. And so to follow on for what I would do with a hiring manager is, I would never assume, if it's a new hiring manager, right? I would never assume a hiring manager knows how to interview a candidate. And that's a bit of a mistake that a lot of recruiters make. So during that briefing process, I would make sure that I've agreed and advised on a suitable interview process with the hiring manager. Because the hiring manager might turn around and say, great, okay, yeah, I want to do a 7-stage interview. First stage with you, second stage with me, third stage with my tech guy, tech person, and then fourth stage, pair programming, tech tests, final sign-off, CTO, I would always push back and say, look, well, let's see if we can combine a couple of those stages, remove a couple of those stages. I think a really good interview process is no more than 3 or 4 stages. That includes TA and tech tests. Because in reality, a hiring manager might even not know the right interview process and might not want to tell you. They may have been using an interview process that has been used since 1995, so they just don't know any better and they'll just roll with it. So a good recruiter will advise on that side of things. Now, I could go on and talk about so many other things, but one more thing I just want to add and talk about briefly, it's never brief with me, is the ATS, right? I put a LinkedIn post about this a couple of weeks ago, but no one engaged, but that's just LinkedIn. It's with the ATS, it's really important that the hiring manager knows how to use the ATS, right? There's a lot of assumptions with TA partners, just assuming that the hiring manager knows how to use the ATS and just say, right, here's your logins, just crack on. Have a play with the system and see what you can do. So one of my biggest frustrations, and this is going back to our pledge to give hiring managers their day jobs back, one of my biggest frustrations with ATSs is the recursive acronym, and also the fact that the hiring managers can see all of the candidates. This is really specific. The hiring managers can see, if they're added to a job, they can see all of the candidates in the inbox that apply. Right. And quite a few hiring managers start to do your job for you by going into that inbox, and they start saying, oh, Tom, this person looks good, this person looks good, this person looks good.
Backseat recruitment.
Where they may look good from an experience point of view, a skills point of view, but they're based 500 miles away, or they don't have a visa, or they are looking for 150K and the budget is 50K. All these things that we screen out as part of the team. And I've spoken to Workable, literally spoken to Workable, like Tech Help, Greenhouse, Team Taylor, and I said, for the inbox part of the process, how do I completely shield the hiring managers from not seeing candidates until I put them through to the hiring manager review stage? And they've all come back and they've said, no, we can't do that. And I'm like, that's a massive drop. That's
surely
huge.
There'll be a way, instead of setting them as a hiring manager, surely you could set them as something different with different parameters.
No, all users, whether I've been through this.
We're going to get in. So if someone does know who's listening, please come to Tom's rescue if they found a workaround, because that blows my mind. I had it before. I mean, as the external, I don't tend to get on too many ATSs. GDPR is a bit of a stickler with that. But if I have an email address, I'm fair game with it. I work with the team then. But I had that once. And the problem that I kept on facing was we had people in the late stages, like real late stages, and the hiring manager was like, okay, I want to interview this one and this one. I'm like, but why? Like, you've got someone that you really like there. They're at the final. Like, let's see. It's like 2 days from now. Let's just see how that goes. These candidates will still be here in 2 days' time if it doesn't go well. But now you're going to start a process with them, and if you love them, you're going to delay that one. And if you don't, if you don't love them as much as that one, you got to wait till that one finishes. Then you're going to ruin that candidate experience. It gets a bit confusing. I can see why that would cause frustration.
100%, and that's another good reason. Yeah, they've got their final stage candidate, and boom, into the inbox, another really good candidate. But then they look good on paper. We've got to go through that whole process.
Yeah.
And the best thing I do to mitigate against that is during my hiring manager brief, I tell them to switch off all notifications from the ATS, switch off all the notifications. If there's a decent candidate to review, I will email you, I will Slack you, I'll Teams you, anything apart from a notification from the ATS. But honestly, Eden, I'm at the stage where I am going to build my own ATS. I'll build my own ATS one day, and that will be the first thing I put in place.
There is a guy that I do know. He's in the community that we're both in. A guy called Jordan. I'm going to tag him into this. He's building an ATS at the moment, so I'll tag him and I'll see if it's a feature that he's been thinking about. All this and the good news, and this is actually part of the reason, the title of this, right, is recruitment isn't broken. And there's a conversation we had. There's a very influential influencer who stepped into the recruitment space via another company. We're not going to name names because we don't want to throw shade. Let's just say he's on Dragon's Den. You could probably work out from there. But he made a bold claim about recruitment being broken. Then it pissed you off. It pissed me off. And then you came back to me and said, actually, I realised why he's done it because he's from a marketing background. That's got all this buzz. And here we are with a podcast which is counteracting that. But I still think it needs to be said because everything you've just gone through there highlights that when recruitment is done, when the good recruiters are in place, whatever part of the role you're in, or whatever kind of internal, external, whatever, it shows that recruitment isn't broken. There might be elements that could be improved, but by and large, recruitment as an industry is thriving, in my opinion. We are at the forefront of the company bringing pick talent in with the gatekeepers, as it were, to the values of the company, with the gatekeepers of the teams themselves. So it suggests that it isn't broken, otherwise companies wouldn't be hiring. So that being said, what strengths or what elements of the job do you think we as an industry just truly excel at? Because I do also want to point out as well, when people see those types of comments from people who are in a public figure, it's so demotivating. And you sit there and think, fuck you, I've been doing this for 10 years. Like, how dare you tell me that this industry is broken? So I kind of want to highlight from what do you think is good about what we do?
So I agree with you, right? And it's like anything, right? You get good recruiters, you get bad recruiters, you get good accountants, bad accountants, good clowns, bad clowns. And
you love a clown.
I don't know, just we went to a circus.
Yeah, I've realised this. There's 2 clown references. Make it a third and then, it becomes a thing.
So I think, if a good recruiter, as I've just said, you get candidate experience right, hiring manager experience right, you get everything right, and recruitment is not broken, right? It's definitely evolved, right? It's definitely evolved, as I think we'll go on to. But I think the industry's strengths currently, even compared to, especially compared to 10 years ago, TA is now seen as a strategic and integral part of any scaling business, right? Which I think is a strength in itself. We are now, as TA professionals, we are now truly elevated within a business, and sometimes even part of the overall business strategy. I remember I partnered with a Series B funded business a couple of years ago as their head of TA, and they were going through this massive sort of change, changing the way they structured their business. And there was a meeting with the CEO and like 10 of the sort of execs, and I was invited to that meeting. And I mean, I felt like, people talk about imposter syndrome. I felt like I was like, all the big wigs around me. But I was there coming in as their acting fractional head of TA. So a big part of their transformation was their hiring plan. It was huge. And so I had to advise on, the CEO was like, Tom, what's your strategy for the hiring plan? So I had to go through, what we were gonna do. So yeah, we are. Whereas 10 years ago, I don't think TA would have been part of those conversations. So we're becoming trusted advisors that hiring managers and C-suite come to at the start of the process, right? Rather than those recruitment guys that hiring managers go to after they've exhausted posting their vacancy on their LinkedIn. Open letter to hiring managers: don't do that. Don't post your vacancy on LinkedIn. It attracts agencies.
Really?
Yeah, like hiring managers say to me, "Oh, Tom, can I have a link to it? I'm just going to put it on my LinkedIn," like as if that's. I mean, if that worked, that's all I would do to fill a job, right? I'll just post a vacancy on LinkedIn.
I encourage my hiring managers to do it personally, and I am the external. So yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously, when we see it, I don't particularly like it when hiring managers say no freelance recruiters, no agencies. I get why you do it. I do understand it. But there's going to be a point where and we'll come on to this in a minute, there'll be a point where you need support at some point. Every company
100%.
usually needs support at some point. But I think for me, if you can save money using your internal before you work with me, I'm all for it. Because then that means that when you work with me as an external, you're way more committed because you know I have exhausted these. So if someone says to me, like, we've just opened this job, it's a brand new company, I'm like, okay, cool, let your job advert run. Let's see how it goes in a week. Put your post up, because I haven't seen you do that yet. If you're still struggling, you've got 3 people waiting for you. And if you're not, then you didn't need me in the first place. Waste of time for you, waste of time for us. Let's just then call it quits there and protecting that time. So it's interesting that you have the other way.
So no, I didn't say that as a diss for agencies.
No disrespect. No, absolutely not.
I said that as like hiring managers sometimes have that in their head as their strategy, right? If TA was that easy, we'd all be posting vacancies on our LinkedIn.
But sometimes it is that easy. Maybe not the last couple of years. I will have that, okay. But much to maybe some of the hires I made back in 2019 to 2020, and if you did hire me back then, was sometimes that easy. You would, and that is, I think, the beauty of the niche and being real specific. I put up a post, and I can guarantee some local engineers, especially for hiring in Berlin, good talent I'd connected with. They saw it, and then you make the connections that way. But that's because I've done the legwork behind the scenes. So sometimes it was that easy because of the legwork.
Because you've got the network. Hiring managers don't have a network, although they think they might. But anyway, look, this is becoming towards hiring managers now, and I know you all. So yeah, we're becoming trusted advisors, and hiring managers come to us. In some instances, in some businesses, we go to hiring managers before they even know they need to recruit, and that's when it works perfectly, because then we can work out prioritization. Right, you need 3 people. Let's not recruit all at once. Let's do a campaign now for this one, and then next month, and then the following month, because you don't want 3 people starting at once. That's too much work for you, especially when there's a much bigger hiring plan. And a massive strength of TA now is that we can be flexible. There's options out there. There's loads of options for companies and TA leaders to use when they're recruiting. To name a few, you've got the absolute TA pros who build out their safe and secure internal perm TA teams, right? That's probably the biggest one when it comes to sort of medium to large size companies. You've got the absolute TA ballers who just use agencies. They just love spending the money on agencies. There are some great...
We don't all cost that much. This is the subtle diss that's now happening.
No. There are some great agencies out there, right? Real specialists that easily outperform internal teams, especially in, and I'm going to get this wrong, right? I'm going to embarrass myself, but especially in really niche technical areas like, is it Salesforce devs? Like you go to an agency for...
Yeah, you get Salesforce, yep.
Is it Golang?
Golang, yep. And you said you didn't do tech.
I hate tech. It gives me... I hope no one's listening. I love tech recruitment. I have done loads of tech.
Only do tech recruitment. That's all you do now.
Stressful.
Flooded with tech requirements.
Honestly, it's stressful. Then you get the TA royalty who engage with solo contract TA partners who just swoop in and act like an internal resource roll up their sleeves on a dedicated project from day one. Then you get the TA thought leaders who engage with embedded talent and RPO companies. Embedded is an amazing option for medium to large hiring plans or companies who've just secured their Series B and they've got a 12, 18-month hiring strategy. An RPO is just for much larger enterprise businesses who have hundreds and hundreds of vacancies. They need a real headway on those vacancies. They need sourcing support. They need recruitment support. And they need a real robust TA framework built for the long term. Plenty of other options out there. Of course, there are so many crossovers with all of these aforementioned options. There's a big flower-like Venn diagram of, a company could use embedded, or they could use RPO, they could use a solo contract TA partner, or they could use embedded. So what have I missed? Did I mention solo contract TA partners?
I think that's the beauty of it, right? And this is now also why, going back to the beginning, 10 years ago, right, you were my enemy, right? As an embedded recruiter, I would look at you and go, you're trying to take my jobs, right? But then in the reality is I was also naive to think what's the differences and when you need to use it. But I also think sometimes internal teams don't necessarily know when is someone right for them and when someone not right for them, the model wise, because they're getting sold to left, right and center daily. And then it all just becomes noise. But there's a purpose time where embedded is the best solution. So go find an embedded team. An RPO, vice versa, to an external versus to a fractional TA. There are times where you will outperform me, and there'll be times where I outperform you. Just depends on what the nuances of that company are. So it's about really working out, if we're going to engage a partner, what do we actually want? What do we need? And who can offer us the best service to get that done efficiently? In my opinion.
Absolutely. So something that I want to talk about is how recruitment has evolved throughout my career. So I think I've covered a lot of these points, but just want to rewind the clock a bit and actually sort of get your opinion. So like a lot of TA professionals, I started out in agency recruitment. All right, the likes of other recruitment agencies are available, but I started out working for Hayes Accountancy and Finance. Terrible experience. Search Accountancy and Finance. Recruitment agencies who are geographically linked to cities. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think from an agency point of view, these geographically linked agencies are a thing of the past. It makes sense since, you can find any client candidate anywhere from any location. I don't know. Maybe there is some old school recruiter somewhere on the high street with their lever arch file waiting for candidates to walk in and register. Probably in some industries. I don't know. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? Geographically linked agencies, is that a thing of the past, or is that still relevant?
No, I don't think it is, if I'm honest. I think it is still very, very much relevant. So if we take us as a business, we're still relatively small. So we can't go everywhere. It's impossible. So we do focus geographically, predominantly into Germany. Yes, where before I was only doing Berlin hiring, and it worked very well. I knew all the companies that I needed to know. I knew a lot of the talent. But then obviously starting up our own organization, especially now we've had a downturn, you kind of got to peel back, look at, okay, Berlin wasn't providing what we needed to, so we go elsewhere, but there's great opportunities in Germany. I would say over the last 3 years, less than 10% of our business comes outside of Germany at the moment. So we stick to what you've got the best relationships with. Otherwise, you just spread yourself too thin. There's a friend of mine who works for a company that is a direct competitor to us, but they go locations, and they literally set up a year ago, and they got funding. and their funding is based on the fact that they're looking to scale AI recruitment in North Rhine-Westphalia, then into Hamburg, then into Berlin, then into Munich, and that was the premise of their funding. So I know a lot of people do it, but on the flip side, the real niche skills. Another friend of mine does Elixir recruitment. You have to go worldwide. You have to create a market around the technology. So I think for us as externals, it's either geographically linked to a broader technology or technology linked to a global scale. So we do more broader technologies, so the geographical side works.
So geographically linked to a city or a country?
To a country. It used to be a city for about 8 years.
That's
and
what
now
I'm
it's to a country. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about cities, high streets, and that. Okay, but
yeah, not to that set. But there was a point. I mean, this is 6-7 years ago when we were scaling. Our former company was scaling into Berlin, and we were breaking it down into technology and then into city. And in Berlin, you have obviously kind of neighborhoods, so we would break it down into neighborhoods. And there were like 6 of us doing the same city, the same technology, different neighborhoods. So then you really cover it. I don't think you can do that as much these days. That was in the heyday of recruitment, as it were, when tech was thriving and money was pretty much free, and everyone loved external recruitment at that point. And now, obviously, everyone's bringing it internal. There's a lot more models on there. I think that was too extreme, personally.
That definitely sounds like it. So going back to sort of that was really my experience of agencies, and maybe it wasn't a fair experience. I didn't, like a lot of agency recruiters, I couldn't wait to get out of agency recruitment quick enough. So I did manage to pivot into internal recruitment about 12 years ago in the oil and gas industry in Aberdeen, the Granite City. And this is just what I wanted to get across, my point of what I think TA is now versus what it was back in when I started. Again, I don't have the monopoly on being right here, but from my point of view, when I started my career in TA, I don't even think the phrase TA was used. This was 2012, especially in the oil and gas industry, maybe in the tech industry. But from my experience, I was the weirdo lone wolf internal recruiter in the corner of the HR office, reporting into the HRD. And I'd say that's the biggest change, that TA internal recruitment isn't HR anymore. And I love that, right? I really like that. I really like the fact that we're not part of HR. Some companies we are, but TA is its own business unit, completely separate from HR. A lot of the times, the head of TA doesn't report into the HRD, reports straight into C-suite these days. We're strategic, we're proactive, we can hit the ground running. We're definitely not the weirdos in the corner of the HR room anymore. In fact, I've actually worked for, this is the last thing I've got to say, I've actually worked for Series B startups where the CEO has actually refused to have an HR department, spend money on an HR department. In fact, I remember I was at lunch with the CEO once. I mentioned the word HR, and she kind of gave me a little dirty look. But
Great culture.
they're happy to spend money on investing in, a TA team. Greg Jackson of Octopus Energy has famously said in many interviews, this was years ago now, and they've grown massively since, but he's famously said in interviews that he doesn't believe in HR. He doesn't believe in IT support either, which was a weird one, but I don't know about that. He doesn't believe in HR, but he has a huge TA team for Octopus and Kraken, which is his tech company. And I think a lot of tech CEOs are going down that route. Have you come across that with your?
Not at all. No, absolutely not. I mean, every single company I work with and have worked with always put HR first, and then TA comes second. Yes, TA and HR are separate in the vast majority of them, but there's always a HR person, or people and culture is what they're also sometimes referred to now. I mean, people and culture is a bit of a weird mix between the two, I find. There's always a HR manager or head of HR for a recruiter or talent acquisition manager. Sometimes I'll ask them to do both, which I don't think is possible, not correctly. They are two very, very different jobs. Yeah, no, we don't. Not I've seen or maybe have acknowledged as much, but I don't see it where TA's before the HR, and even I only do tech. So, but it's interesting that you mentioned Octopus Energy and Kraken, because I imagine he has IT support in those projects. It's wild if they don't, and they also have HR as well as a huge TA team. So maybe it was a throwaway comment whilst they were in that scaling phase to try and generate a buzz around them. Oh, that's a bit different. But now they're a more mature company. It'll be mental not to have that.
So my wife works for Octopus. So she's managed for Octopus, and she is. I mustn't say too much, but she has highlighted that there is that massive lack of HR. I'll have to go fact check with her now, because we spoke about this maybe 6-12 months ago, but I think every manager in Octopus, their sort of mantra is we are HR, so every manager is their own HR. But maybe that's changed. I don't know. This is out in the public now, so
that's a very trusting culture, because if you have the wrong manager in place, that could be catastrophic to a team.
Oh no, I agree.
If that person's selling the work, policing the work, and then policing any issues that happen around it, that's creating a dictatorship within each team. That seems crazy. Fair play. I do want to. I'm conscious of I want to wrap this up because I've got one question left to push to you, if that's cool, Tom. I know you said the last one there, but I know, and you were worried about not being able to speak for enough. So I want to skate forward and go to the very last question I wanted to ask you, which was, you've been head of TA, right? So from your opinion, one, what makes a recruitment service provider, be it external, fractional, embedded, RPO, stand out in your eyes? And then, a little separate part, what are some of the red flags companies should be looking out for? Because all this topic is around how good recruitment is, all these different models, which is great, but let's give the people something concrete in the sense of, this is what you should be looking for. These are the red flags you should be noting down. Take it away.
So let's use agency as an example here, right? Because I have been head of TA, and I took a bit of a, I was, and I'm not saying I'm right here. When I was head of TA, just because the circumstances dictated that I couldn't use agencies, because I had 2 recruiters, and I had made a promise to the CEO, right, we won't need to use agencies. This is, and they had a fixed budget for recruitment for the year, so it just wasn't in the budget. And so I had quite a few agencies reach out to me, sell to me. That's fine. A lot of them, because I do like to talk, a lot of them, if they piqued my interest, I wouldn't necessarily give them business because I couldn't, but I'd like to have a conversation because I like to speak to other people in the industry. But what doesn't pique my interest, right? And this is going to be an unpopular opinion with you, because I know it's really good strategy that works and gets you the money, right? Gets you the placement, and that's what you're doing. I don't like spec CVs. I find them really frustrating. Hiring managers, it confuses hiring managers. Hiring manager will receive a spec CV. They'll come to me and they'll say, I want to interview this candidate. And I'll have to push back and say, well, there's no name on the CV. I can't find the candidate. That will come out of your budget. Not my budget. We can't use a recruitment agency. So spec CVs, because that's not adding value. So for an agency to pique my interest, you need to add value, right? You need to not be another agency. So you need to come in and soft approach, this is who we are. This is what we do, and maybe add value. Something like we can not only find candidates, we can advise on DE&I strategy, right? That we are DE&I experts. This is what we've done for our clients in the past for DE&I. We've helped clients in the past put together a talking heads video for their brand. This is an example. So things like that outside of I'm a recruitment consultant. If you're recruiting now or in the future, let's stay in touch, because I'm not going to stay in touch. I don't have. Oh, hang on. Yeah, do you know what? I'll write your name down for when I'm recruiting.
Let me just put that in the bank of names that I'm going to forget tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you what, I don't like from agencies as well, and I don't see how it works. I had this all the time. It's recruitment agencies who don't realise that I speak to other people within my company. So recruitment agencies that said, "Oh, hey Tom, I was speaking to a really good conversation with the CCO earlier, and he said you're the best person to speak to. You're recruiting for this for him, and he said that you'd be interested in seeing CVs from me." Okay, well, the first person I'm going to speak to is my CCO, who I know really well. I'm going to pick up the phone to my CCO and say, Eden from such and such said that you had a good conversation. You want to see CVs? No, not at all. He rang me on my mobile. I was really annoyed. Don't know how he got my mobile number, but I told him to fuck off. I was like, that didn't happen. Don't lie. Don't make up conversations that didn't happen. But I did have one guy, right? He emailed me. He looked at my LinkedIn. He runs a software dev recruitment agency, and he used to work with someone I used to work with in my TA team back in my worldwide technology days back in 2019. And he said, "Oh, I used to work with such and such. He knows you. You know, you're a sound guy, and this, that, and the other." That piqued my interest. I was like, "Oh, yeah, that's cool," because I knew the guy, and so I said, "Look, I really don't have anything at the moment, but let's have a chat. And I had a Zoom call with him, and that was a few years ago now. And I'm still in touch with the guy. And actually, after I left that company, I moved onto another project. This was at the end of last year. I moved on to another project where I needed to collaborate with an agency, and I thought, oh, fuck him. Yeah. So I gave him a call, and gave him a bit of work. So that really stuck in my mind. He rode a motorbike as well, so we had some common ground to chat about. We texted, met him.
Everyone rides motorbikes. That's the only thing. But I love that, because I think that also shows the aspects of the industry evolving. I agree, by the way, 100%. I know you use agency as the example. You can obviously go into many more aspects about all of the models, but it makes sense. You know, you can pick my side apart. It's fine. But I do agree. You know, if someone is spamming without reason, calling without being transparent or honest, they're just massive red flags. We get it. I mean, I get approached all the time as a co-founder for various service models, and I get the same thing. I'm like, piss off, delete. So I now see it the other side, and I can look back at my career and go, oh, shouldn't have done it like that. And obviously, you learn from mistakes, but I think now, when I take a look into companies, I always ask me, why us versus someone else? And value add is always that thing that comes up. And I know you're doing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, posting that value add side of things. And that's what I think is the biggest difference now. And when companies are looking at service providers, it's okay, great, we can all sell what we do, but the proof's in the pudding, and you can't get to that part. So you need to kind of make decisions on other things. Value add, what more can you do for me? How else can you help my business outside of just the recruitment? That seems to be the key trick. Like I said, I see it with what you're posting on LinkedIn. I see it what we do with the podcast and all those side of things. It does work. So I do obviously think companies just need to have a look and go, okay, anyone can put a logo on an introduction. Anyone can say we work with such and such, or put Tom said this, and he was the CTO for unknown company, and it's some BS reference that you're never going to check. Instead, who's the person? What value can they bring? But go on.
And so just on that, right? Final point on that. So you as a business owner, you sat down with your business partner and you scoped out your Purchase. Is it Purchase? Peritus. Sorry.
That's all right.
Peritus.
It's not like we're 55 minutes into a podcast.
No, I know. I've got friends who owns like a company called Tertius, so I had that in my mind.
It's all right.
So you sat down with your business partner, your co-founder, and you have defined your unique value proposition, right? So you have defined that, you put that on your website, you probably use that UVP in your outreach. Now, what I would ask any recruitment consultant coming in to work for a company like yourselves is for them to sit down and go through the same exercise, right?
What's their unique spin to doing it?
When they're reaching out, they're not reaching out. Yeah, they're reaching out from Peritus, but they're not Peritus. They're Joe Bloggs. They're Joe Bloggs recruitment consultant. What's their UVP? Right. So you define that, and you can actually, I won't go to it now because I don't have time, but you can actually use, with some tweaking, ChatGPT to define your UVP. And I think more people need to sit down, recruitment consultants sit down and really do that.
So I appreciate you running through all of this. There's a lot to unpack, and I think the good news is that I think you've summarized recruitment isn't broken. There's tweaks, there's things to learn, but it's thriving. There's more ways companies can hire. There's more expertise in the industry. There's more transparency, collaboration between different partners. We're in a better position. We've gone through hell and back, and we're starting to now seeing things connect. And I think the next 10 years for talent acquisition is going to be some of the best we've ever seen. But I do appreciate you spending some time going through and sharing your opinion. If people want to learn a bit more, connect with you, speak to you, what's the best way they can get in touch?
Just LinkedIn. I'm always open. I'm nowhere near my max connection, so feel free to connect
away. I'll put your LinkedIn in the description on this then. But thank you so much for taking the time, and enjoy.
No, you're welcome. All right, speak to you later, Aidan. Thanks.